Okay, let's do it.
Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
Hey, what can we do for you tonight?
Well, I just have a couple questions about bonobos, but whatever y'all have time for. One of the things I was wondering is the size of their community, and if that has anything, if that affects, basically their monogamy or lack thereof. Like, does their aggression change for a larger size community, or do they regulate their community to keep it smaller on purpose? Like, is there any way to keep it small?
Sending people off and splintering bonobos off intentionally and things like that when they reach a certain size, that kind of thing?
Right. Yeah, just for the size of it, not, somebody did something wrong, we got to kick them out. But,
Sure.
Hey, our community is getting too big. It's time for this one to go for a reason or another. And if that has anything to do, if that affects their aggression or anything like that, just the size of the community.
Okay, well, it sounds like your question's kind of connected to the one we had earlier. And yeah, I mean, they have larger communities in general than their counterpart of common chimps. And in fact, if zoos have any problem, it's often because their communities are so small, and bonobos don't have enough variety. They like variety. Bonobos like variety in sex, in friendship, in sharing food. One of the theories about why bonobos are the way they are and why common chimps are the way they are is because bonobos kind of grew up in the Congo on the side of the river in the jungle, and they are in the trees above, the bad critters, and they're the biggest critters in the jungle, aside from humans now, of course, are shooting them. But when there's no humans, they're the biggest. So they can be very relaxed about life. And common chimps are out there in the savannah, and they have a harder time. They have leopards and lions after them. And so they kind of have to be a little more aggressive. They're not the biggest, and they have to go in smaller groups. Bonobos love to be in big groups. It's good when the females have a lot of friends, a lot of female friends, so that they can gang up on a male who gets out of line. They don't like to kick other bonobos out. They just like to discipline them, or what Claudine Andre of Lola Ya Bonobo calls teaching. Which doesn't involve killing, but it does sometimes hurt. Because if the bonobo male is so stupid or uneducated as to rape a female or attack her children, her girlfriends will gang up on him. And that's why they like large communities. They like to share food. They like an orgy.
Who doesn't?
Right, exactly. We just don't like to allow it. We don't like to allow ourselves. But really, who doesn't? Who doesn't read about that Roman history and go, well, that might have been good if they weren't just killing all the people at the end of the orgy. But if they just had the orgy, hey, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's bonobos.
And I was also wondering, have they done any that you know of brain scans on bonobos versus people to see how they differ as far as when there is something negative that happens, when they want to, as you said, discipline the male, and how the brain works when they decide how to discipline him, if that question makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense, and I don't think I'm the one to answer it. Although I do think they have the similar parts to what we have. They have the intelligence of what we call, in human terms, a 7-year-old. I think that's just, and keep in mind that's human terms. In some ways, they're more intelligent than us. But yeah, they can get to the level of a 7-year-old in terms of our capacity for learning. That kind of thing. And common chimps tend to be better with tools. Bonobos are better with communication. And their language could be very, very complex. We don't really know. They speak our language better than we speak theirs. We don't really understand Bonobo. Who
learn sign
they
language?
understand English though, or whatever language, and they will communicate with sign language, and they will communicate with computers to point to things. So the question was about bonobo brains, and I'm not equipped to answer exactly what the differences are. There are differences. They're over 98% genetically similar to us. Although I do understand, and I'm not a geneticist either, that the way that their genes are expressed is different in such a way that it causes a lot of difference. So that even though they are extremely similar, it's the expression of genes, which don't ask me what that means, except that it means a lot of what being human is about. And that
And
the
common
expression
ancestry.
of our genes is different than theirs.
Mhm.
So you got to have a primatologist or a neurologist maybe, or a geneticist on here to get into that stuff.
And I certainly don't want to speak out of turn because I am none of those things. Like you, I understand their brain structures to be very similar, but certainly different. I am aware of some cortisol level testing and some various research along that line. And from what I understand, they seem to have a greater ability to downregulate stress hormones and to basically experience anxiety or maybe that adrenaline rush feeling, those sorts of experiences potentially at a higher level. That's anthropomorphizing a little bit, and it gets very tricky, but seemingly they do have those stress reactions, but have a greater ability to sort of manage or down-regulate that stress reaction, at least per my understanding. I'll certainly take a look and see what kind of research I can find on that and make sure to post that in the footnotes to the episode.
Oh, I want that ability.
Bonobos down-regulating their stress compared to common chimps. And it was specifically a study of males. And it did show that bonobo males are a lot better at doing that than common chimps. Now, it didn't, I don't know, this particular study didn't compare it to humans, but it did show why common chimps, even when they're young, they're basically grumpy old apes. And why bonobo males seem to be sipping on a fountain of youth. It's partly because of the way the females treat them and the way that they treat each other, but it's also they got this ability to be like yogis. They're very chill, and maybe that is something yogic. They say that, you know, people that are really into yoga and meditation can downgrade their stress much better than the rest of us, and so maybe that's not all just, you know, I guess, nature, but somewhat nurture.
Sure.
Interesting. Okay, that was all I had.
Okay, well, beautiful.
well,
Thank you
that's a
so much
lot.
for your questions. I really appreciate you giving us the call.
Yeah, thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great night.
You got some real science-oriented people here. That's good.
Yeah, well, we are definitely known for and proud of our skeptics and our strong stance on science as an ideal. So